Hi Lara Wentworth and welcome to the Resolution Room. Great to have you.
Hi Damien, thank you for having me. This is exciting.
It's a pleasure. Now listen, I'm new to the coaching scene, so I was doing the landscape review and your name came up, and thank you for connecting with me. And I really appreciate it because your mainstay of your work is, of course, coaching lawyers. So we both have that in common, although I want to touch upon my journey and yours. Let's start with that if we can. Lara, tell me about yourself. I mean, you're a lawyer by profession, but you've been a coach for quite some time now, and you've formed a business called the Coaching Advocates, in which you really specialise in the coaching of lawyers. Is that there's a lot more to your story than that, but have I captured some of the essence?
Absolutely. I mean, where do you want me to start kind of thing? So definitely hatched out of my career egg as a lawyer and did that for a number of years. Stopped and started 3 times to have children and one other time to have a nervous breakdown. and then came back every time, better and stronger, I suppose. And then in about 2018, so I was admitted, I think in 2002, something like that. And then in 2018, I started to get a little bit itchy. I was feeling, I don't know, it was a weird thing, Damien. Like I was just sitting at my desk one day and I had this overwhelming feeling that I was sitting in someone else's chair. And I'd been sitting in that chair for years. But I couldn't shake this feeling. It's like, this is not my chair. And I wanted to find my chair. And it was just then an ongoing search for what is that? Where is that? And that search led me down the coaching path. And gosh, here we are, 7 years later.
And tell me then about the formation of the Coaching Advocates, Lara. That's really a unique business offering, isn't it, in terms of, are you getting traction? Are lawyers much more open to coaching now?
When I came out of law into coaching, I felt a little bit alone, a little bit isolated. I thought, am I the only crazy person out here doing or thinking that I can do this? And then I found a few other crazy people like me, which was nice. And so we got together and we formed, almost by accident actually, Coaching Advocates, which is now as it stands, a global coaching and training firm focused on lawyers. So we have, I think we're up to 23 coaches, I think. On last count, we're up to 23 coaches who are all lawyers, ex-lawyers, all people who have worked intensively in the legal space for a long time and have all retrained as qualified coaches. My
story has some resonance actually, in the sense that not quite that I was thinking I was sitting in someone else's chair. That's kind of powerful. But, I'd been in business for a long time, started a firm with another partner that we merged into an international firm, and I did some time there, and I realised that you have this sort of rare time in your career where you've got enough experience but also enough youth, if you like, to reinvent yourself. And so for me, as you know, it was a 2-pillar approach, the mediation work and dispute resolution, but also I wanted to do the coaching because I just wanted to cherry pick the 2 things that I really loved about my work, which was resolving claims as an insurance lawyer and developing people. So my business was not so much born out of sitting in the wrong chair, but realising that I had this time in which I needed a new challenge and a new perspective. I'm really glad I've done it, and I'm glad I've reached out and found more people, because I was pretty good at knowing who to connect with in the legal space, but the coaching space I'm very new to, so I appreciate connections with you and others in that space. It's really, as you say, it can be quite lonely, coaching, and it's made a difference.
It's a tough gig. Your question before is, are lawyers becoming more open to coaching? Yes, but slowly, and it's not it's not one of those get rich quick schemes, that's for sure. It's a hard gig, and only because a lot of it has to do with educating the client about what coaching is before you could even sell it. A lot of people don't know what it is. Like, when I was a lawyer and I said I was a lawyer, nobody said to me, "What's that?" Everybody knew what that was. So it's just about then building connection and seeing if they had a problem that I could solve. Now it's a different story. I'm a coach. What's that? It's not an easy gig, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that. I've been reflecting on at the moment doing a course for accreditation. I want to talk about the unregulated nature of coaching compared with other professions. But it's really interesting because a lot of people, myself included probably as a former managing lawyer, would say that they were coaching people. But really, we were mentoring. There were aspects of coaching in terms of the skill set, but it's really been interesting for me to step back and realise when coaching is done well, how unique it is and how probably we're not as familiar with it as a model yet in terms of what it can achieve and what it's designed for.
Absolutely. I think we're still a little bit behind the rest of the world down here in Australia when it comes to coaching. So when we go to Europe and North America, they're a lot more familiar with the concept. They're a lot more accepting, and a lot of them really see the value in it, firms and individuals. And there is that confusion of mentoring and coaching that kind of happens quite a lot. As you know, there's a big difference between them.
Yeah, tease out for me, for the purposes of the lawyers listening, because it's mainly lawyers, what's the key differences, Lara, between mentoring that people are familiar with, more of an advice-giving role, and coaching?
Yeah, and that's pretty much the key difference. So mentoring is primarily about advice giving. So if you've got a mentor, you've got somebody there that can kind of hold your hand, show you the ropes, share with you how they did it, and then maybe give you some advice on how you should navigate certain challenges or your career. And it's a very valuable thing. I think, it's not to be discounted by any stretch. I think mentoring is a really important part of our professional development and growth. Coaching, on the other hand, is slightly different. Well, it's a lot different, actually. Coaching is more about holding a space for the individual to work out the solution for themselves. So it's not really about telling them what to do, because it works on the premise that any advice that I give somebody is going to be molded by my understanding of the world, my experience of the world, my model of the world. And as we know, no two people ever walk the same path, even though they might be very similar. So you and I are lawyers, but there'd be, I've not been in your shoes, you've not been in mine. So any advice I give you is going to be based on my experience. It may or may not work, and you might feel obliged to take it because I've given you that advice. Whereas coaching is asking you really good questions, it's holding space for you, it's honouring the fact that you already have all the answers and the resources that you need to find the path, to find whatever success means for you. And as your coach, I'm teasing that out of you so that you can actually utilise it.
Agreed. And it's really interesting. I love the adage, people want to change, but they don't want to be changed. And I know in my world, when advice has resonated, it's because I've been ready to integrate it. So it's interesting that coaching comes at it from that notion that really the answer lies within, and you're very much a process facilitator. I'm really interested in that because obviously I've done more formal training in mediation, and there's a lot of similarities in terms of being a facilitator of a process and the importance of that. I didn't appreciate entirely how much crossover there is in the world of coaching and mediation, but it's really interesting.
There is quite a bit, actually. Before I became a coach, one of the chairs that I thought I needed to sit in was mediation. So I did a little bit of training when I was doing the master's program through the College of Law. I did the mediation stream, and now that I've done the coaching, there's a lot of crossover. And it's interesting because what attracted me to mediation is the same thing that's attracting me to coaching. It's that ability to hold space, to listen actively, to be curious about people, to reflect back to them in a different way what they might be saying, to kind of just bring out the best in people.
Obviously, you're all former lawyers in terms of the coaching advocates, but you're also all accredited coaches. So that gives the market a level of comfort with both your legal expertise, if I can call it that, or experienced, and also your coaching expertise, which I think is important.
Look, I think so too. And that's something that we wanted right from day dot. We wanted to make sure that we were all qualified, and whoever we brought on board were also qualified in some sort of modality or coaching, qualification. And I think there's two reasons for that. The first reason is that we want to make sure that whoever we are coaching know that we know what we're talking about. And that builds that level of confidence and trust and credibility. But the other thing I think that's really important is that if we, as lawyers, move into coaching without any coaching qualifications, I think we could easily slip into mentoring, because we will go back to our own experience, and we might think that that's what coaching is. And again, it's valuable, and there's lots of people who do that really, really well. But if coaching is what you're looking for, there's got to be some training in that so that you can understand the difference. And also there's some things that we need to learn, like how to structure a session, how to, communication skills that come with being a coach. If we don't have the training for them, like I said, I think we can easily slip back into mentoring.
Agree. I've been coaching, but I'll come to that, not in as much of my mediation is the mainstay of my work, but I've noticed since I've done the course, there's a couple of things already that I've looked back in conversation, I'd approach that slightly differently now. I was conscious of that difference right from the outset, but I look back at how much more acute it is, that difference now between mentoring and coaching. And I know in reflecting on some of the early coaching relationships, I've sort of I'd bring a slightly different lens to it now. And that's someone who's just started the journey of accreditation. So let's talk about all things lawyers, Lara. Why lawyers, and what are the main drivers for people to seek you out and seek out coaching?
On a personal level, I wanted my journey in law to mean something, and I wanted it to be a catalyst or a platform for whatever I did next. And so it made more sense to me that after all that experience in law that I would qualify and become a coach for lawyers. That just kind of was a given. They're kind of my people. So that's on a personal level. But if I step back and I think about why lawyers, it's because they're a group that are less likely to identify when they need help and less likely to seek help. And I've coached now, I don't know how many people, hundreds of people. I've got maybe 1,500 hours of coaching under my belt. So I've seen a lot of things and I've heard a lot of things over the years from lawyers. And I can tell you that there are themes. In fact, there's a book in me somewhere about this. There are themes that I hear over and over again that make me think there is a certain type of personality or mindset or something that is attracted to the law. The overachiever, the person who needs validation. Sometimes, there's that theme that comes through. People who tend to look for what's wrong more than what's right, and so that can create
so true
levels of anxiety.
A tendency towards perfectionism.
Absolutely.
That's a common.
Yeah.
Other themes, Lara, that jump out at you?
I think I identified 7 one day. I was sitting on a plane and I was like, if I was to write a book about the 7 themes that I see, and I came up with 7. But, definitely perfectionism. The overachiever is a really big one, and it's that kind of never enough. And then underneath all that, sadly, is this feeling of not good enough. And so, there's people like Dr. Laura Empson in the UK who calls it the insecure overachiever. So that person who never can get enough achievement under their belt so that they can then prove to themselves that they are good enough. Yeah. So it's kind of like a bottomless well sort of thing. And this thing about we need to be busy to be competent.
Validated almost, or competent. Yeah. So, sometimes, I notice when I left managing partner, there's a lot of validation that comes from being so needed. People are, want your opinion or advice or your view, or they're running. And so, just bang, it's finished. And it's like, okay, you have to really look at that really honestly. I think you've hit some really key personal themes. I'm nowhere near as advanced in my coaching story, but I see all those things as prime drivers, myself included. You're overachiever, you've probably been the compliant child at school, the overachiever. So you've got a lot of validation from the external world saying you're smart or whatever the case may be. You find yourself at law school and you go for it. What has come into my world as a coach, and remember that it's early compared with yours, is the tendency towards perfectionism, which can really impede you developing a business development mindset. People have approached me, sometimes if I think of what I'm working with them on, it's more about helping them let go of some aspects of perfectionism and build relationships and rapport and with a view to building broader business networks or broader business opportunities. And I've looked around and I've seen that clearly that must be a need, because there's certain people out there that are just kind of business development coaches for lawyers. I guess because your tendency towards law is to think that, you're a legal expert, you know your stuff, you don't have to sell in the same way potentially. that's a really interesting story. I resonate with all those points around the overachiever and validation. You touched on that because I've noticed from our discussions that one of your skill set is NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just going to have a stab at it. It's kind of like the internal narratives or the stories we tell it, and you work with people to help unpick that.
Definitely one aspect of it, but if I can distill it down, neuro-linguistic programming is really about how we use language, and that's not just verbal language, but the language of the mind, all the ways that we communicate with ourselves and others, and how that language then sets the programs that sit in our nervous system and become unconscious. So, you would know, and you would have seen that you have unconscious programming. You probably don't know because it's unconscious, but, by the time we're 35, 95% of how we live our lives is on autopilot. So we have unconscious programs for absolutely pretty much everything that we do by that point. So, and that happens for a reason, because we can't be thinking about everything that we do. There's got to be stuff that just happens, that just kind of does itself. Sometimes those unconscious programs, those patterns of behavior, those emotions, they don't necessarily serve us. They need changing. So a big part of what I do is helping people build that real deep sense of awareness of what unconscious barriers are getting in the way of them achieving the success that they want to achieve. And so a lot of them don't even know what's in the way until we start coaching, and I ask them some weird and wonderful questions about what's getting in the way, what's in their belief system, what's in their value system, what's in their childhood and their upbringing that they've learnt, that they've made unconscious decisions about, that has created patterns over the years that now doesn't serve them anymore. So the beautiful thing about NLP, and I chose it deliberately when I decided to retrain as a coach, because I really wanted a modality that created sustainable change. I didn't want something that just scratched the surface, because I knew that lawyers are creatures of habit, and if we just scratch the surface, if we just teach a strategy, if we just change a behavior, that when the rubber hits the road, we will go back to what we know instinctually and unconsciously. And so I wanted something that worked on the unconscious level so that you can actually have the change you want long term.
And have you seen, Lara, lawyers being open to that approach? It's very, there'd be some resistance initially, I would think, from getting that to that level of depth in terms of the internal narrative. And
I don't come at it and go, right, we are going to reset your brain and we're going to rewire you from the inside out. That's not kind of how I sell what I do. I use, I suppose, NLP in the coaching that I do. I wouldn't call myself an NLP coach, and there are some amazing NLP coaches out there who just coach in NLP and use only NLP. So whilst I'm very much trained in that, and that's my favorite tool and my go-to, I do draw on other things like, CBT, positive intelligence, and a few other things. But ultimately, it's kind of inbuilt in me now. Like I can't get around it. It's in the way I speak. It's in the way I think. It's in the questions I ask. And what I find I do, if I dig down a little bit, is I'm constantly connecting dots of what's happening or what could be happening for that person. And so I connect enough dots that then it starts to make sense for the person, and then they make decisions about what change they want to. But I don't come out there and go, we are now going to put you
of course.
Under hypnosis and, So, and look, some people are very open to it. To my surprise, some people that I think would never be open to it are more than happy to be like, yeah, sure, I'll close my eyes and do a timeline process with you. I'm like, oh, cool, let's do that. And whilst others have been very resistant to anything other than talk therapy, and that's okay, or talk coaching. And that's okay, because NLP works in that space as well. You don't have to kind of close your eyes and imagine things for it to work, or visualize things. It's in the way that we communicate, so it's fine.
In terms of your work with lawyers, are there any other pain points that you see in terms of getting in front of a coach? Is it been destigmatized a bit more now? I think it's started to be more acceptable. I mean, certainly if I put myself back 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't really hear a lawyer talking openly about a level of business or personal coaching, would you? But that's changing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Look, we didn't even know what that meant back then. I don't think it was a
No.
thing.
It's really ironic that I'm talking to people about coaching, and I had mentors, but never really experienced with coaching until I'm doing it. So it was never really a thing, was it?
So some of the things, I suppose, that prompt people to reach out to coaches, it's a long list, but if I can just think of a handful of things, people that might want to progress to the next level of their careers and feel a little stuck or unsure. And the barriers for them not being able to move vary. So it could be things about, around lack of confidence, self-doubt. It could be that they just don't know what suits their, what they want. They just don't know what they want and how they want to spend the rest of their career. I've seen all sorts of different patterns on the unconscious level that are quite fascinating that get in the way. A person who has reached a certain age and she's got a belief that by this age I should have my life all figured out, and she doesn't. And so therefore that's causing a lot of anxiety and clouding her judgment and just, clouding the way forward. She just doesn't know. So that's something we're working on with her. So that's that career progression part, and the career path for a lawyer is changing. It's not the tradition. It's not just the traditional path that you and I grew up in. There's so many other ways now to do law, and so many, law adjacent careers that people can have. You could become a legal influencer now.
Yeah.
So that's all changing. And so there's a lot more choice, and that's actually creating, believe it or not, even more stuckness. Now there's too much choice and people don't know what they're best suited for, and they don't want to miss out if they do one thing and not the rest and the next. And there's this whole thing about being pigeonholed. Like, if I just do one area of law now, am I going to be pigeonholed as a family lawyer for the rest of my career? What if I want to do something different? So that's kind of on the career front. And then on the personal front, I see a lot of people who are stressed and overwhelmed and feel quite crappy. And they're not coping too well with the overload, with work, with the expectations, with the perfectionism, any of that sort of stuff that stops them from producing and being their best selves. And then we see all sorts of other things. There might be a business development challenge. I really need to grow my division or grow my practice, but I'm not really good with people, or I'm not good with, I don't know how to sell, or I feel like a fraud, or any of that kind of stuff. The way that I explain what we do is, if you think about a person's legal skills, the stuff they learnt in law school, kind of in the middle here, and all the other skills that sit around it, to really give the legal skills room to breathe, to come alive. We coach around all the legal skills so that we can allow that person to use their legal skills to the best of their ability. So that might be, time management stuff. It might be client relationship stuff. It might be just people relationship stuff. It might be confidence, overwhelm, stress management, career development. Leadership is a big one. People find themselves in a role of leadership and they're like, now what?
Now what?
And now what do I do with these people? I don't know how to do this. So we do quite a bit of leadership coaching, and just kind of general wellbeing and life coaching.
I want to talk about wellbeing because it's part of a big pillar in your work. And you were open about the three children and the nervous breakdown, and I can't say exactly that, but in 2016 or thereabouts, I was suffering from a level of anxiety to the point of, for about 6 months, was on an anti-anxiety medication. I really looked at that and thought, well, I didn't want to continue down that road. So I've really been on a path of wellness in terms of meditation and running and health. And I'm only mentioning that because it's made me realise that leadership, law, professional work is very much a marathon and not a sprint. And so the ability to be able to maintain health and wellness, and for me included revisiting my relationship with alcohol, was really important in that space. And I'm sure that I'm not alone. You
make a really valid point. The way I look at lawyers is like athletes. I think we are just athletes in the profession, not physical athletes, but we are. So we're mind athletes. And if you look at an athlete, a runner, for example, they're not running all the time. They have off seasons where they rest, where they meditate, where they eat, where they sleep, where they do all the preparation, all the work, so that when race day comes around, they're on. And no one turns around and says, "Oh no, you broke your leg. You better keep running." If an athlete hurts themselves, they take the time, they rest, they heal. It's interesting that for lawyers, it's a point of shame if we break our metaphorical leg and we can't run anymore in the race. We've got to pretend like we can, even though it's very painful, because what would people say? How will people think of us? What would our reputation be? And all that kind of really destructive line of thinking, which thankfully is changing more and more. So well-being is such an important component, not a side nice to have thing.
No.
It's a really important component to what we do.
To professional success, you can't build it without a level of wellness, in my view, is where I've landed. But everyone's story is very personal in that space. That holistic view of yourself and looking at yourself as an athlete and functioning well. And I think it becomes obviously more acute as you get older to realise the importance of that in a whole different way. So it's certainly been part of what I've been, my story as well. I think it's really remarkable, the work that you're doing. There's no one else in the Australian market that I see that's doing coaching work bespoke to lawyers. Is that right? Have I missed something?
Not anybody at our scale. There's obviously some amazing coaches out there who coach lawyers, but I think the last time I Googled, the largest or the biggest coaching firm for lawyers, we popped up. So I think in terms of the scale that we have, we probably are the biggest, if you like, if you can describe us that way. That comes with its benefits and its risks, I suppose, because there's nowhere to look for it's kind of inspiration or to model on anything. So we're kind of almost inventing the wheel, and it's hard. Like it's really tricky.
I know what you mean. You're hoeing a path, but I'm sure that probably scale also opens up doors in terms of HR and learning departments in law firms, because they realise that they're more comfortable perhaps with buying a broader brand potentially with a number of resources or people under it.
Absolutely.
As opposed to individuals. Yeah. So that no doubt is helpful as well. So thank you so much for your time and expertise. Sadly, we could go on forever. I'd love to actually. But you're also a podcaster. Tell us a bit about that. You've got the Speed Coach podcast. And I've listened to one as coaching session actually.
Yeah. So yes, we have our own podcast called The Speed Coach. And the idea of The Speed Coach is that each episode is actually a coaching session with, and not just myself, but with all of our coaches. We have, I suppose, turns at coaching somebody over the podcast, and we reduce that to, so we coach for an hour, we reduce it to half an hour with some editing and funny sounds and other things. We, anonymize the person, the coachee, obviously for confidentiality. So we use AI to change their voice. And basically the idea is, going back to what I said before about the education piece, about what coaching is, and then working out whether or not the person needs it. In my view, everybody needs it. But anyway, that's another podcast discussion. That piece is really about the education piece. That really is about demystifying what coaching is all about and giving people that front row seat in a real life coaching session, so they can sit in and listen, and they might have similar issues to the person being coached. They might hear themselves in that story. And so the idea is that we're coaching one person over the podcast and hopefully reaching a lot more people who may just need to hear that episode for them to make some changes for themselves. But, hopefully they reach out and say, hey, can I have a go? So yeah, that's the idea behind it. And it's been doing, we're up to season 2. We're only up to season 2. It's only a fresh project, but so far we've had some really great feedback, and people are getting a lot out of it. So we'll be back for season 3. I think.
Keep going is my view. So Lara, you're leading the charge, I think, and you've got a great business, and I really appreciate you reaching out to me. So where can people find you in terms of your website?
Website is coachingadvocates.com. You can find us there. And, You can see all of our coaches actually on our website. Every single one of our coaches is on the website, and you can book a 30-minute complimentary chemistry call with any of the coaches that you like on there, and you book straight through the website. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Coaching Advocates. You can find me on my own personal LinkedIn page, Lara Wentworth. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
Oh my goodness! You've got all bases covered. I mean, I'm just all over LinkedIn like a cheap suit. Not that my suits are cheap, but
LinkedIn's amazing.
That's remarkable. Yeah, thank you so much for your time and expertise. I can say this, that I'm really glad we connected. I picked up straight away on the polish and the credibility of the people on your website in terms of coaching. And obviously, we both got a vested interest in ensuring, because of our commitment to contribute and coach, to this coaching idea being taken up more broadly. And I think you're right. I think there's the winds of change. And I can sense that as well. So congratulations on getting out there and getting out of that chair that wasn't quite working for you and doing what you're doing now.
Definitely in my chair now. I feel that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can see you're very comfortable in that chair, Lara.
It's definitely mine. It's definitely mine. But thank you so much too, Damien, for reaching out. I admire what you're doing. It's not easy to kind of, pretty much reinvent yourself and do something totally new. So, that's kudos to you. And I think it's all about, for us, building an army. And I think it takes an army to really make a dent in the way that we practice as lawyers, so that we can become more fulfilled, happier, healthier, and really make a real contribution to the world. And that's what we're all about.
Great stuff, Lara. All the very best. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.